أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our dear viewers, and welcome back to today's episode of The Life of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Today we look at an event like no other, an event in which 5 people came together and our Eid is celebrated for this. It's something known in history as one of the greatest events in terms of showing the power of Islam. The event of Mubahila against the Christians of Najran is something which cemented the place of Islam above the other monotheistic faiths. To start off with, I welcome our guest Sayyid Ali. Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullah.
Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
How are you keeping, Sayyid?
Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to this episode, inshallah. You know, an important Eid, people don't realize often it's undermined against some of the other Eids. But I'd like to start off by asking, who were the Christians of Najran and what role did they play in this particular area? What was their significance?
أحسنت. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى أبد الآبدين. The area of Najran was a city bordering Hijaz and Yemen. It consisted of 70 or so smaller villages. The inhabitants of Najran, before the emergence of Islam, were all followers of idol worshipping or paganism.
I see.
And in the beginning of the emergence of Islam, for some reason, the inhabitants of the area of Najran, they all converted to Christianity.
Okay.
When they converted to Christianity, in the time period that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, he took that time to start writing letters inviting the kings and emperors and the leaders of the world towards Islam. One of the letters that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent inviting its people towards Islam was to the people of Najran. So when the messenger of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam carried the letter and came and arrived to Najran, he was directed to the Archbishop of Najran, which was an individual by the name of Abu Harith.
Okay.
Abu Harith received the letter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He read the letter with deep concentration. Once he found out about the content of the letter, history books reveal that he invited the other bishops, the other leaders of the community, those important individuals who had a say in how things were run in Najran. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I'm okay, thanks. So Abu Haritha invited those individuals for a delegation.
Okay.
So they can give their opinion regarding this letter that they have received. And I would like to read a segment of the letter, or what was mentioned in the letter by Rasulullah to the people of Najran. The content of the book or the letter says, in the name of God of Ibrahim, Ishaq and Jacob, from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the messenger of God, to the bishop of Najran and the people of Najran, if you accept Islam, then I thank you to God of Ibrahim, Isaac and Jacob. Now I invite you to worship God from the worship of people. Now every point mentioned in this letter has a meaning.
Okay, nice.
I invite you to the worship of God from the worship of people, i.e. Nabi Isa alayhi salam. I invite you to the guardianship of God from the guardianship of the servants. If you refuse, then the tribute, and if you refuse, then the tribute, and if you refuse, I have declared you war and peace.
Okay.
It's very self-explanatory. Rasulullah is inviting them to the worship and the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and is outlining why he is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling them, because you worship people other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, if you decline, then the next point of resort would be either war or peace.
I see.
So he doesn't close it there and then. He says, you have to worship or else. Rasulullah gives them options. This letter is a letter of peace.
That's it.
When Rasulullah invites people towards Islam, he invites them with a smile.
Basic.
He invites them with love. He invites people with care and compassion. This letter to the people of Najran was the same letter that he wrote to the emperors and the kings of the world. He invited them in a manner of love and accepting one another. The Bishop of Najran, Abu Haritha, as I said, after taking extreme care and reading the letter in concentration and accuracy, he formed a group for consultation. Amongst this group was a named individual called Sharhabil.
Okay.
This Sharhabil was known to be a wise individual. It's very well and it's very good to nominate and pinpoint the wise members of the community,
Of course.
because they are always handy.
Of course.
Because man and human beings, they usually have trials and tribulations in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Life throws things at them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Holy Messenger and Ahlul Bayt, always advise that smart person or the most cleverer of people is the one that adds or joins his intellect and his brain with the intellect of others. He shares their intellect, their wisdom. So Abu Haritha, from the beginning, he is a character of wisdom.
Ahsant.
He takes great care before he makes a decision, especially if that decision is going to be a decision affecting other members of the community.
Okay.
So he invites a number of the other bishops, a number of the other religious individuals, a number of the communities, leaders of the community, the most influential individuals of the community. Amongst them is this individual by the name of Sharhabil, who was known for his nobility, his reasoning, his wisdom, and his management. So he asks Abu Haritha, after reading out the letter sent by Rasulullah, he says, "O Sharhabil, tell me your opinion." Sharhabil was also a knowledgeable individual. He replied to Abu Haritha, he says, "I have known what God promised Ibrahim in the offspring of Ismail of prophecy." He says, we, the Christians, we have evidence of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised his prophet Ibrahim about how there will be prophets in the lineage of Ismail.
Yeah.
And he stops there. He says, if I was knowledgeable, if I had enough knowledge about religion, I would have advised you further. But I would confine my advice to you to that point, that there are prophets in the lineage of Ismail alayhi salam. So at the end of the delegation and the conference, the conferencees, they agreed to the following: that they should send a delegation to the holy city of Medina. That delegation was made up of 60 individuals. Abu Haritha was one of them. and two other major, important, high-ranked bishops of Najran by the name of Abdul Masih, the servant of Masih, and Al-Ayham. These individuals were the bishops. Of course, there were other individuals. So these 60 individuals, alongside Abu Harith, Abdul Masih, and Al-Ayham, they arrived to the city of Medina because they were invited by Rasulullah to take Islam as a religion. So they said, let's go to Medina. We will sit down and we will discuss signs of prophethood and see if he really is a prophet. So their main aim and intention of coming to Medina was, it was an honest attempt for them to find out if Rasulullah is really a prophet. At least these guys, they made an attempt to come and investigate.
So I want to interject just one moment here. So obviously you're going to go into what occurs when they arrive. But there is something obviously that Amir al Mu'mineen does here that plays a pivotal role in dictating what occurs further on down the line. So upon their arrival, I won't go into what happens, but Amir al Mu'mineen plays quite an important role here and something that we need to learn from in terms of when we go to see people, when we behave with certain people, how our etiquette should be, how our dressing should be. So he teaches us quite a big lesson.
Yeah. The books of history narrate that when the bishops of Najran, they came dressed in their full attire.
Yes.
Their robes and their garbs made of silk.
Yeah.
You know, because they want to show their might in front of this individual who's calling towards Islam, and he is assuming the position of prophethood and prophecy. So they were wearing their golden rings, they were carrying their cross necklaces around their necks. So when they arrive, they see that the companions are unhappy, unpleased of their appearance. And news arrives to Rasulullah. Rasulullah shows that he is unhappy, but stays quiet, stays silent. Some of the companions who had a friendship with the Christians of Najran, they come to Imam Ali alayhi salam and they say to him, Ya Abul Hasan, what is your opinion about these individuals and how they have arrived? Imam Ali alayhi salam, he doesn't order them to go and confiscate or take by force what they are wearing or loot, because they were the overpowering force in Medina. Amir al Mu'mineen says, go and advise them that we have certain etiquette, we have certain rules and regulations. If you like, go back to where you have camped, change your clothing, take off your crosses and your jewelry, because we the Muslims, when we come to enter the holy places, for example, the mosque of Rasulullah, we are always advised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep our belongings aside and come to the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Christians of Najran, they do that. With respect, they go, they put everything aside and they enter humbly and they sit before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, they were carrying gifts. They gifted Rasulullah. Rasulullah accepted, and he sat down in speaking to them. Of course, Amir al Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, being the right hand man of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was an individual who the companions always came to ask for his opinion in certain matters. So Amir al Mu'mineen was present in that gathering as well.
This discussion, when we look at it, it led to the Mubahala. So if you don't mind me asking, what resulted in them being the ones to challenge Rasulullah to a Mubahala? Why did they think that after this whole discussion, they've checked the Nabuwah thing now, obviously you'll go into it, but what led to them thinking, I have to challenge this man?
Because when they arrived and they sat before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Holy Messenger of Allah started off reciting the Holy Quran.
Subhanallah.
He mentioned some of the verses of the Holy Quran that touches them and their belief.
Okay.
And how they replied to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a confrontational reply.
Okay.
They told Rasulullah that we refuse what you have recited, and that we were Muslims before you.
Oh wow.
What they meant by that was that we believe in the things that you are mentioning before you.
Okay.
Because many of the Islamic principles,
Yes.
they were present in the messages of Prophet Isa alayhi salam to his followers. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saw that confrontational reply, and the fact that they assumed that they were following some of the Islamic rules and regulations before him, he quickly said to them, you lie.
Okay.
Because once you invite someone to Islam, you have to be straightforward. Because this is a matter of belief. This is a matter of religion. At the same time, it doesn't mean that you have to go outside the boundaries of ethics and morals.
I see.
But when you are speaking, you should speak to the point. Don't play around,
Yeah.
saying, oh, I am thinking about the person in front of me. How is he going to feel? Is he going to be shy? Is he going to be emotional? No, be humane in how you speak to the opposing person, but at the same time mention your faith and your beliefs. Rasulullah said to them, you lie.
Oh, okay.
3 things. We need to know what Rasulullah, because at the event of Mubahala, and as you mentioned, it is an event that is taken nowadays as Eid, as a celebration. We need to know exactly what happened. It's not that Rasulullah took out Fatimah al Zahra, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and Amir al Mu'mineen, and they were victorious because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed certain verses upon them.
Exactly.
Rasulullah said to them, you lie, and there are 3 things that prevent you from Islam.
Yeah.
Don't come to me saying you were Muslims before me.
Exactly.
There are 3 things that you currently do that is preventing you from joining Islam. What are these 3 things? Rasulullah says, the first, you worship the cross.
Yes.
By wearing the cross, or by going to the church and you stand in front of the cross, you are worshipping the cross. And you are eating pork. Rasulullah outlines this to them. And the third, you claim that God has a son.
Yeah.
They said, Christ is God because he revived the dead. He talked about the unseen, and he healed diseases and created a bird out of clay. These are the miracles of our Prophet. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied in saying, he is the servant of God, and his word which he delivered to Mary. His word meaning the ayah, the miracle. One of the Christians of Najran said, Christ is the Son of God because he has no father. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam falls silent for a moment. And normally when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam remains silent, that means that there will be a revelation from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this verse. He says, Ya Rasulullah, tell them, إن مثل عيسى عند الله كمثل آدم خلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. The likeness of Jesus, or the example of Jesus to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is like the example of Adam, whom he created from clay.
Yeah.
He told them, if you say that Jesus has no father, then Adam is more superior than Isa alayhi salam, because he has neither a father or a mother.
Exactly.
And Adam was created from clay. If there is anyone, according to your mentality, who is worthy of being called God or the Son of God, that should be Adam, not Isa alayhi salam.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then once this verse was revealed and Rasulullah recited this verse to them, the delegation of Najran, it is mentioned, they could not reply back. And they said, this matter, we do not approve of you. That's it. You say you're a prophet? We don't approve of you. They couldn't reply. What could they say? After this, Allah revealed the revelation. But this is an ayah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they said that we don't approve of you. That's it. We don't accept. We don't accept whatever you're going to say. We won't accept. So both parties, they insisted that each one is the rightful one. They decided to end the dispute through an event or through a process called the mubahala. And this is something that occurred on numerous occasions after Rasulullah, the times of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. But it was started off with Rasulullah.
If you don't mind me asking, the word mubahila, what does the word actually mean? Because the occurrence is one thing, but the word has its own definition, no?
Ahsant. So when they both agreed that they are each party is on their path of right, Allah reveals the ayah.
Yeah.
So there were more than one verses that were revealed in this situation. It's in Surah Al Imran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Holy Prophet of Islam, Ya Rasulullah, فَمَنْ حَاجَّكَ فِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ فَقُلْ تعالوا ندعو أبناءنا وأبناءكم ونساءنا ونساءكم وأنفسنا وأنفسكم ثم نبتهل فنجعل لعنة الله على الكاذبين. The translation of this verse: but whoever disputes with you in this matter after what has come to you of knowledge. Of knowledge is the verse that came down in the Mathala Isa عند Allah. So then say, O Prophet of Allah, come, let us call our sons and your sons, our women and your women, and our near or ourselves and yourselves.
That's the beauty of this verse.
Then let us be earnest in prayer and pray for the curse of Allah on the liars. Here, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam sets the rules and regulations of mubahala. You ask me, what is mubahala?
Yeah.
Mubahala is an attempt to reveal who is on the right path and who is a liar, about their religious differences. So in the Quran, the term mubahala is mentioned as a decisive solution when two individuals or two parties, they dispute over Prophet Isa alayhi salam being part of Trinity or not. So here Rasulullah tells them, now that I have spoken and you have spoken and you believe you're right and I am certain that I am right, then nothing remains but mubahala. Let's agree to a date and time and place. They agree that they will go away and they will prepare themselves and they will come back the next day outside the city of Medina. They will go bring their children, their sons and their women and their near ones or themselves, and they will do this mubahala, which each party will sit down and supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask for Allah's wrath and adab to be brought down upon the liar of the one of the two parties.
Just to interject one moment here, Islamic history narrates in itself that Rasulullah allowed the Christians of Najran to actually pray within Masjid Nabawi, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So people don't seem to understand in this modern era how merciful Rasulullah was, because these guys have come to question Islam.
Yes.
and he's allowing them to ring their bells, do this. What would you say about this?
Yeah, at the time, this is one of the things mentioned, that before they started negotiating or discussing with Rasulullah, or in the midst of their discussion, it was time for their prayers. They requested that they are allowed to go and pray. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam permitted, gave them permission, and their prayer was towards a specific direction. Rasulullah advised or asked the companions to allocate a section on the side for them so they can pray, and Rasulullah advised the Muslims to leave them pray as they wish, as they like. What can we learn from this? From Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And this is the behavior, this is the ethics and the morals. That regardless of your faith or your religion, and the faith and the religion of the person standing before you, you should always respect and honor the individual, because they themselves, in their faith, they are praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have a creator in their mind that they are praying to. They have something that they have designated as their Lord. The same way you expect people to respect you in your faith and in your religion, and at the time of your salah, you should always practice the same thing towards them. The same way you expect people to respect your places of worship, you always respect their places of worship as well.
And this is the beauty, I think, of this entire incident as well. One of the small sub-highlights that shows how beautiful Islam is in terms of tolerance, in terms of acceptance. Not the way it's depicted today that, we don't accept everyone. Rasulullah to allow people in Masjid al-Nabawi, the purest of places, to say, listen, you guys can do your prayer. Just
yeah. And the same goes today. If you go to Iraq, to Karbala, or other parts of the world, the holy shrines of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the doors are open for anyone to come and enter. These places are for all of humanity. It's not segregated or situated or secluded to specific faith or a specific group of people. Regardless of, as long as you respect, you come stand. One of the beautiful scenes that I see when I go to some of the Islamic countries is that they've opened their mosques at the time of Salah. The people, the Muslims, are praying at the front. They are praying Jama'ah, and they've provided an area for non-Muslims to stand there and quietly observe. Whether you want to observe the beauty of the architecture of the mosque, whether you want to listen to the prayers or the way they are praying, that itself, you don't know, it might be a cause that these individuals will start thinking about the religious practices of the Muslims, about how spiritual they pray, how spiritual they are when they pray and they stand before their God and their Creator. They will question their own beliefs. Say, why don't I have that spirituality in my life?
That's so cool as well.
And that calmness and that sense of happiness that one feels when you go to a masjid and you see people standing there in groups facing towards the holy house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and establishing this connection with their Creator and their Lord. So that should be taken as a very important point from the akhlaq and morals of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way that he dealt with the Christians of Najran. Because that itself, if Rasulullah had denied them to pray, if Rasulullah had denied to see them and meet with them and sit down with them, wouldn't that have been one of the negative points that they would take against Rasulullah?
For sure.
But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam always calls towards akhlaq. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. O Prophet of Allah, in all cases, in all situations, even on the battlefield, you are an individual who practices high morality and high akhlaq.
So to go back to the topic, I appreciate this small divergence I took you on,
No,
but it was a really important lesson.
These are lessons that we need to implement in our lives.
Ahsant. So now what starts to occur is this build-up to Mubahila. So what occurred in the build-up? Because there were some key things that are done by the Christians that they even realized that Rasulullah could be something, you know?
Yeah. So once they were making their way where they had camped, they spoke between themselves. Abdul Masih and the other individual by the name of Al-Ayham, they asked Abu Haritha.
Okay.
They said, "Oh, Abu Haritha, what do you think?" Abdul Masih and Al-Ayham, they were discussing the physical attributes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Haritha says, "Let's wait until tomorrow."
Okay.
And see who he will bring with him.
Okay.
If he brings his companions, then know that he doesn't have anything. He's just speaking.
Okay.
It's just hearsay. But if he brings his family members, then know that he is the truthful one.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the event of Mubahala is not something simple.
Of course.
The event of Mubahala is you are sincerely asking the wrath of Allah to be brought down upon the liar.
Exactly, yeah.
Who would go to the event of Mubahala bringing his beloved individuals, beloved family members?
Exactly.
So he says, what do you think, what should we do if he comes with his family members? He says, we should think twice. Because if he brings his loved ones, his near family, then he is not worried and he is certain of what he is calling us towards. And we should be worried that the wrath of Allah will come down upon us and destroy us. You know, so they spend that night thinking of how they are going to deal with this prophet on the next day.
Exactly. So, you know, the next day comes now, inshallah. And there is something that occurs that truly makes Amir al-Mu'mineen nafs Rasool.
Yeah.
So we go into it from here that, firstly, what was the role of Amir al-Mu'mineen here in this particular day? Because, you know, they said, bring yourself, bring your children, and bring your women. Mm-hmm. They didn't say bring anyone else.
Yeah.
So how did Amir al-Mu'mineen firstly end up coming? And what was his particular position there?
The morning... Yes, go ahead.
No, that was it.
The morning of the day appointed of Mubahala arrived.
Yeah.
The Prophet was seen to be going towards the house of Ali and Fatimah, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. He entered the house. He took the hands of Imam al-Hassan.
Yeah.
He carried Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam.
Yeah.
And he invited Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi and Fatimah al-Zahra to accompany him outside Medina. Why? Because he has Mubahal.
Exactly.
So Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi obeys the request of Rasulullah. Rasulullah exits the house of Fatimah and Amir al-Mu'mineen.
Yeah.
The Muslims observe Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. It's a big day. It's a day of Mubahal. It's a day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reveal who is on the path of the truth and who is going to be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Muslims are certain.
Yeah.
At least those who believed in Rasulullah. Although there were those who were a bit iffy about the whole issue. So, I'm not going to hide it from you and the viewers. There were some individuals, they were thinking that Rasulullah will take them.
Yeah, they were keen, eager.
As they were thinking in other on the battlefields that Rasulullah is going to choose them to be the carrier of the and the bearers of the flag. Yeah. They thought that Rasulullah is going to choose them over his whole family.
Exactly.
So Rasulullah exits the house of Fatima and Amir al-Mu'mineen carrying Imam al-Hassan. Imam al-Hussein was young. Yeah. So he carried him holding Imam al-Hassan. Yeah. Fatimah al-Zahra behind him and Amir al-Mu'mineen behind Fatimah al-Zahra. Salawatullah. Just try and imagine Rasulullah, Fatimah al-Zahra, Amir al-Mu'mineen with the two children very calmly and solemnly making their way outside Medina, where they are going for mubahala. Their intention, if you ask me honestly, don't think their intention or the intention of Rasulullah was to see these people be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Wallah.
Rasulullah always wants the best for mankind.
Yeah.
But Rasulullah puts you on the line. He says, this is haqq. You've seen haqq. You've seen the truth, and you still deny truth, then you are worthy of Allah's wrath to be brought down upon you. So Abu Haritha, the Archbishop and the bishops of Najran, they see Rasulullah coming. They are wanting to know who comes with Rasulullah, because their position is going to be assigned after they see who accompanies Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Abu Haritha, the Archbishop of Najran, asks, who are those coming with him? He is told, the one walking before, or the one walking behind him, is his cousin and his son-in-law and most beloved person to him.
Allah, Allah.
Now, who is saying this? Is not one of the Christians. It is known that they had close friendship with some of the Muslims. There were some of the Muslims, they were advising them.
I see.
So they know, they acknowledge that this is his cousin and the most beloved person to Rasulullah. Those two children are his grandsons, and the lady with him is his beloved daughter, Fatimah salamullahi alayha. Rasulullah sits down. The narrators narrate that Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sat on his knees, jatha ala rukbatayhi, for mubahala. Abu al-Harith says, I swear to God that he has sat like prophets used to sit for mubahala. The first sign of a prophet is the way he sits for mubahala. The Archbishop of Najran says, the way he sits is the way that previous prophets used to sit when they went to mubahala. One of the other bishops said to Abu Haritha, where are you going? Because they saw Abu Haritha, he's not happy. He's agitated. Abu Haritha answered, if Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa this salawatullah alayhi is from me, if Muhammad was not right, he would not dare to come for mubahala like this, bringing his beloved family. And if he engages in mubahala with us, not even one Christian will remain alive before this year finishes. In another narration, which is the most authentic narration, they say that Abu Haritha said, I see faces that if they asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pull out mountains, indeed it will be pulled out. So do not engage in mubahala, otherwise you will be dead and not even one Christian will remain alive. This is Abu Haritha, the Archbishop. Then, after they acknowledge the true reality of what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was on, Abu Haritha comes forward. Because they told him, where are you going? He told them, you will see. Abu Haritha, the Archbishop of Najran, comes to Rasulullah and says, Ya Abu al-Qasim, O Abu al-Qasim, let us not do mubahala. We back out. And make peace with us on something we can afford to do. Even at the time that they are the weak party, they are requesting Rasulullah to be easy on them. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam agreed with them. Rasulullah told them, what do you want? They said, Ya Rasulullah, we agree that every year we shall pay 2,000 robes. We shall pay you 2,000 robes. In Arabic it's called hulla. like a garment.
Yeah.
And every year we shall pay you 2,000. Each robe or each garment was the total net worth of these garments, these 2,000 garments, came to 80,000 dirhams.
Okay.
80,000 dirhams is roughly around 200 kilos of silver.
Very nice.
Now 200 kilos, if you want to know how much it's worth, nowadays 200 kilos of silver, if each kilo was 500 and something pounds, is around 115,000 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. Like
So it was a huge amount at that time.
Yeah.
200 kilos of silver,
It's nothing joking.
because it's not dinar. Dinar is usually gold.
Yeah.
Rasulullah agreed to silver. They said, we will pay you the equivalent of 80,000 dirhams, which was 2,000 robes. Now these robes, they were either sold to the Christians or sold to the Muslims or given to the Muslims. And if Yemen, because Yemen in those days, they were not yet Muslims,
Yes.
because they were on the border.
Yeah.
Najran was on the border between Yemen and Hijaz.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they say to Rasulullah, and if Yemen engages in a war with you, we will lend you, the Muslims, 30 shields.
Okay.
30 shields. Shields were very important in those days. 30 shields and 30 spears and 30 horses.
Oh, horse is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will lend those, and Rasulullah agreed that he will, at the time if there is a war, that he will take those, and when the war finishes, he will be responsible for returning these to the Christians of Najran. So Rasulullah writes a peace treaty between the Muslims and the Christians of Najran, and the delegation takes that treaty and return to Najran. What is important is what Rasulullah ﷺ says after this. Later, Rasulullah ﷺ says, I swear to Allah, who my soul in his grasp, the death of the people of Najran had become close, had they not withdrawn. If they engaged in mubahala with me, they surely would turn into monkeys and pigs.
Ya Allah, ya
This was the type of adab that Allah was going to bring down upon the Christians of Najran. And their whole land would burn. In Najran, these 70 villages, Allah was going to wipe it out. And they would burn, and Allah would destroy all the people of Najran, and even birds will not remain on their trees. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings down adab, He will annihilate everyone.
For sure.
And all Christians will die in less than a year. Now, because they accepted to engage in this treaty and acknowledge in the position of Rasulullah amongst the Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them their lives because of the wisdom of the leaders of that community. How beautiful is it that we have wise leaders in the community that look for the interest of the community as a whole, not only for their interests, the interest of Islam, the interest of the message of Islam. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always waiting to see how a community will honor their beliefs, the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the delegation returned to Najran, it is mentioned that these archbishops, after seeing what happened with them in the event of Mubahala, they returned to Medina carrying gifts, and they became Muslims before Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And when the scholars of a community become Muslims,
Then
then a great number of the community will become Muslims.
Yeah, Sheikh.
The majority of Najran, they became Muslims, but there remained a group that they remained Christians, and there are some narrations that narrate that after Rasulullah, the time of the second oppressor, he banished them from Hijaz towards Iraq.
Oh wow.
So there is an area in Iraq called Najran Iraq. So there are some of the Najranis who were in Hijaz.
Yeah, that were forced.
At the time of the second, they moved to Iraq and they established their community there in Iraq. So this is the concept or the story behind the event of Mubahala and the Christians of Najran. What we learn from this story,
Yes.
and what is important that we go away from this lesson and this episode, is that first of all, we need to hold up our heads high up in honor. This is an honor that Allah has given us,
Yes.
that He has revealed Islam to us, that we were born in Muslim families.
Wallah.
This is the ni'mah, this is the blessing of the wilayah of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim. And when it's time,
Yes.
and when the time is right, you should always discuss your faith and your religion with the other religions and other schools of thought, inviting them towards the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt and the faith of Ahlul Bayt with akhlaq, like the akhlaq of Rasulullah.
Yes, Sheikh.
If they come to you, you go to them as well.
Ahsan.
And there should be some points that you share between you and the followers of other religions. But always stand fast
Yeah.
and firm on your religion and your faith and your practices. And never
Inshallah.
back away.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Sayyid Ali. As
Jazakallah.
always, a very enjoyable episode.
Jazakallah.
And I've honestly learned a lot in terms of akhlaq, in terms of history. It all comes together in one when it's Islam. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Jazakallah
Inshallah,
khair.
many more years of service alongside yourself.
Ilahi.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for joining us again today. And we look forward to hearing from you all soon in terms of questions and comments you may have on this series. وآخر الدعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.